All right, so I just want to talk about some greenhouse improvements for the tomato house. You know, because once you have your tunnel, you have some drip, you have a heater, right? You got your fans, roll up sides, you got exhaust fans, right? Maybe you got to an iGrow. You know, what's the kind of the next step? And there's a few things you can do to help improve the crop. Tomatoes like a warm soil. They're much better able to get nutrients from a warmer soil. And we're talking like 55, 60 degrees at least. And for me, that's not easy. Even if I'm warming the air, the soil can stay very cold. You know, I'm here in a river valley. There's probably water 10 feet down, keeping everything cold. And so early in the season, that's very difficult. And there's a couple of ways you can warm the soil. Well, there's a third, but I'll mention that. One is you can use plastic tubing that goes in between your rows of tomato plants. It's really just a forced hot air or a boiler that's blowing hot air through a tube. You've probably seen them where they go above the crop with holes in it and like a duct. This is just running a duct along the ground. The problem with it is it's like using anything on the ground, like plastic mulch and stuff. It gets in the way of trying to weed, it gets in the way of other crops. It's a little bit of a pain, but it's a great way to do it. It's also going to help with moisture as you heat from the bottom, because that heat will rise and help bring moisture out of the house, which is always good for tomatoes. Another way, which is actually running pipes in the ground. I don't like that way. I don't want to run pipes in the ground in the soil. Not something I'm going to talk about extensively, but there's another way, which is kind of like a halfway, which is if you have really cold irrigation water, and I do, if it's below 55 degrees, and mine's well below 55 degrees, that will cool the soil and keep shocking the plants and shocking the roots as you keep cooling down the soil. So if you can just heat that water just a little bit, right? I'm not talking about sending hot water down there, but just raising the temperature a bit so that the soil will remain at a reasonable temperature, that you won't be shocking the plants. They'll be able to get more nutrients out of the soil. It's a really great thing. So what this is, just a hot water heater. We have the water. This is the water coming into the irrigation, and I have part of it cold, and then I have part coming in hot, and then it just mixes so that it's not really, really hot, it's just warming it, right? So the hot, right, this is warm, cold, mixes, and I get like a luke, sort of, not hot, not cold water that's going through the irrigation system. And this is not only key because you don't want the water really hot, it's just gonna get really steamy in here, but if you try to put all your water through something like this, you're gonna really clamp down on the pressure, and you're probably not going to make the irrigation all the way to the end. So it serves two purposes, and that's to keep the pressure high, as well as the water doesn't get too hot. And it works like a dream. I mean, the tomatoes are able to get nutrients really, really early. They grow fast. The house is incredibly even from one end to the other. You can actually feel the heat at the end of the house when it's on, and adds to the heat of the house. I really, really like it. It works fantastically. And wasn't very expensive. The most expensive is the unit, which is like, I don't know, 600, 700 bucks. And then there's a bit of piping and getting the propane attached to it. The second improvement that I made, if you have a long house and you're just using one of these heaters, which is very common, to use just a forced hot air in the corner and then use fans to kind of bring that air down, and you don't have a tube doing it, is you end up with a few dead spots of heat. right? Some places it's colder and warmer. And when it gets really, really cold out, it may be warm over there, but really, really cold over here, and you get uneven growth. Not really the best thing. So to combat that, I just added another heater in the far corner. So when the heat drops below the set point and both heaters come on, the heat rises very, very quickly, so that it's much easier to remain at a consistent temperature throughout the house by having heaters on both sides. There's a cost in running that pipe, the propane pipe, all the way down. It has to be a flexible, probably stainless pipe, but I just ran it along one of the purlins down to the other end, and it's been working great. There is one thing and a tip about doing it, is it's going to change how you set your set points, because when those two heaters come on and then they shut off when they hit the right set point, right? They'll raise the temperature, they'll hit whatever set point, 2 degrees past your 71, 73, shut off. Well, there's residual heat, right? The fans will keep on just blowing, the gas will be off, but there'll still be heat coming out of them. So what you'll see is it'll shut off, but the heat will continue to rise because they're from both ends, and they're really, it's a lot of heat. And what you don't want to happen is now that they're trampling on your cooling. So what was happening for a while is that heat would rise up into the cool stage, vents would open up, cool it back down again, heat would come on, and then there'd just be a battle. And that's very hard to solve, but it's just something to keep in mind. So you want to look and make sure that things aren't battling when you have, when you really raise your heating system. That was never a problem with one heater, because by the time that heat got out there, it was being mixed with so much cool air that, as soon as the heater went off, it would just start to go down again rather than continuing to rise. So just something to keep in mind as, if you do go that route. Well, thanks for watching, and make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're not a subscriber already. And I'll see you next time.